Good morning, everyone. Delighted to be here at Thinking Digital to talk about Accenture's technology vision. Before I start, though, has everybody been outside and seen the arm stand with the amazing selfie mosaic that they're creating? Hands up, anyone taking a selfie? It's outside. It's absolutely brilliant. So as I was coming in, they asked me if I would do an Ellen and just take a selfie from the stage of all of you to go in the mosaic. And I've checked and I've got permission to do it. So if you all don't mind, if everyone could just pose for the camera, I don't know if this is going to work. Is everyone ready? Don't say cheese, say think digital. And another, there we go, hopefully. Perfect, thank you very much. I will send that to them and it will be up on their mosaic shortly. So I'm here, where's the clicker? Here we are. I'm here to talk about technology, but if you'll indulge me for 1 minute, I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit about television. Are there any fans of Sherlock or Doctor Who in the audience? Hands up? Yeah, some of my favourites. Well, I read the other day that the writer of Sherlock and Doctor Who, when it was rebooted, Stephen Moffat, was just 25 when he wrote his first show, Press Gang. And that really resonated with me for a couple of reasons. First of all, it made me feel like I hadn't really achieved enough by the time I was 25. But at the same time, it made me feel very nostalgic for my youth because I was absolutely obsessed with the show Press Gang. It was about, I don't know if anyone remembers it, it was about a gang of school children who ran their own newspaper. And the editor of that newspaper was my ultimate heroine. I thought she was amazing. And at that time, we didn't have Captain Marvel and we didn't have Wonder Woman, and really formidable and feisty female heroines were a little bit thin on the ground. So when I was 12 years old, I loved that show and I was absolutely convinced, it was settled in my mind, I was going to be a newspaper editor. My dad, on the other hand, thought I should be an engineer because I was very practical and I liked solving problems. And he was probably more right than wrong, as dads often are, but you know, we won't tell him that. And so as I grew a little bit older, I realised that probably I didn't have a future as a fictional character. And I realised that what really fascinated me was people and how we interact with the world around us. So I went to study geography at university. And technology really didn't figure in my life at all until I was about 21 and I was finishing up my degree. And at that time, I got my first mobile phone. I bought my first PC. It looked a little bit like that one, to write up my dissertation. And, you know, that sounds simple now. It was mind-blowing at the time. I used the internet for the first time to track down people to do my research. And I realised that technology was going to be absolutely central to how we as people interact with the world and how we solve problems. So I joined Accenture because it seemed like it was full of people and they solved some big and interesting problems. And I learned about technology. I learned about infrastructure. I learned about databases. I learned about analytics. And now my job is the artificial intelligence lead for Accenture Technology in the UK. And I look at artificial intelligence technologies and think about how they can be used to solve problems for customers, for employees, for partners, and for citizens. And throughout all of that, what's really stuck with me is that technology and the technical know-how is incredibly important, but it's actually the application of the technology. It's how we use it to solve problems that really matters. What does it really mean for all of us, people in the street, in this theatre, in our workplaces, and in our homes? And that concept of people really unites, it's the glue that unites a lot of what we're thinking about as a company at the moment. Every year we launch a technology vision, and it's the result of a lot of research that we do with our clients, our partners, and we look at what we think will be the key trends impacting business and society in the next 3 to 5 years, driven by technology. And in 2011, our technology vision stated that we believed every business would become a digital business. And at the time, that was a little bit disruptive, and people thought that was a bit strange. But lo and behold, here we are. Most businesses are doing digital in one form or another. Over the last couple of years, we've looked much more at how technology is becoming embedded in our everyday lives, how we all work and live, and we've looked at the impact of artificial intelligence and extended reality and what that really means for businesses and for society. And now we are ready in 2019 to declare that we believe the post-digital era is upon us. Now, that does sound a little bit like something one of my geography lecturers might have talked about. What do we mean by post-digital? Well, we don't mean that digital is dead. Far from it. Digital is ubiquitous. Everyone is doing digital to one degree or another. And as customers and citizens, we all have high expectations of digital to one degree or another. So in a world where every business is a digital business, where every customer expects digital, how do you differentiate yourself? And this is where we start to talk about the post-digital era, because the answer to that, very simply, the answer to differentiation is people. And more specifically, we believe it's about thinking through how will applying technology solve a problem for a customer, for an employee, for a partner, or a citizen? And will applying that technology, will using technology as the solution be the simplest, most effective, most ethical, responsible, and secure way to solve that problem? And so that's really the crux of our technology vision this year as we think about how to apply the next wave of technologies. And so finally, I am going to talk a little bit about some technology. We believe that there are 4 key technologies that will form the foundation of transformation over the next few years. And most businesses are already starting to grapple with these in one form or another. We wouldn't be Accenture if we hadn't turned it into an acronym. So we have called these technologies the DARQ technologies, which sounds slightly sinister, but I'm hopefully going to illuminate them a little bit and how some of their applications are very positive. So the DARQ technologies, 4 technologies, D is for distributed ledger, the blockchain. A is for artificial intelligence. R is for extended reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, all the different ways we can apply technology to reality. And Q is for quantum processing, quantum technology. So the DARQ technologies are the ones that we really believe will be transformative. Now, at the moment, I think in the wider population, people who aren't in the industry, people are probably quite familiar with maybe 2 out of the 4 of those. We actually did a consumer poll, and we asked people about blockchain, and 55% of people wouldn't even hazard a guess as to what blockchain was. 2% of people thought it was something that you could probably buy in B&Q, DIY tool. And fair enough, right? Because this technology is not necessarily well explained or understood. So a lot of these technologies are going to be applied in the background. They're going to be a little bit invisible and potentially anonymous. And so businesses starting to think through how to apply them in the most responsible and ethical way for people is going to be absolutely critical in the next few years. I'm just going to talk through each of those technologies now and talk about some of the practical applications. And I'm going to start, I'm not going to do it in order because obviously that would make too much sense. I'm going to start with quantum because I think that's the furthest away on the horizon. It's probably the least mature, the one we're least familiar with. And I don't know, has anyone here seen a quantum computer? No, they're not very common. And we tried to demo one at an event last year, and we couldn't actually do it because we couldn't get approval from the venue for the liquid nitrogen that we needed for the demonstration. So, you know, if you add the kind of elaborate kit that tends to be kept in a bunker somewhere out of town, and you add that to very complex scientific theory, you know, quantum does feel quite mysterious and quite mystical. But when we start to think about some of the applications, I think the mist starts to clear. So Volkswagen are a good example. They are using quantum processing to experiment with car batteries. Now, at the moment, the big limiting factor on electric vehicles is the range of car batteries. We've moved it to about 100 to 300 miles at the moment. But it still needs to be significantly developed. Volkswagen are using quantum processing to model the behavior of molecules in the car batteries to be able to customize them to particular vehicles to improve the power and improve the range. And in doing so, they're making electric vehicles more and more viable, which will help us to cut emissions. So if we think of applications like that, there are similar applications in healthcare to look at things like using computational processing for organ donor matching, for precision treatments, or for very complex treatment schedules like radiotherapy. So if we start thinking of some of those applications, we can see how quantum can be really transformative. We're seeing lots more investment. companies doing quantum are opening it up for people to be able to experiment. And the US, China, Europe have all announced big quantum programs. So this is going to be really exciting in the next couple of years. Blockchain, the distributed ledger, lots of misunderstanding about that. It's easiest to think of it as a very transparent database. And even then, that doesn't sound very exciting, does it? But if we think about the application, we're doing a project which we trialled with the UN in Calais last year called ID 2020. And that is about using the blockchain to give refugees or displaced people a digital identity. So if you are fleeing your home, you don't necessarily have your identity papers with you. You arrive at the border and you've got no way of proving your identity. And that is a huge limit to what people can then do as they move into these new countries. And so we've worked with the UN to use blockchain to create a digital identity that's secure, it's accessible, it can't be manipulated, and it means that people arriving at the borders can actually get a new home and a new life. And if we start to think of it in that way, the distributed ledger feels a lot less like a dark art. I'm going to spin through this one because I spent time taking a picture and now I'm running out of time to tell you my examples. Let's talk about extended reality then, augmented and virtual reality. And that's probably one people are a little bit more familiar with. People have probably used the headsets for training or gaming perhaps, am I right? People have had a go with that. Well, there are other applications for that too that are fast becoming reality. We've just announced a project with Audi, which is solving a very practical problem using extended reality to help with car sickness, particularly for children. So children between the age of 2 and 12 tend to get car sick because they can't see out of the window properly. By giving them a virtual reality experience, they can go on a dragon ride or a roller coaster ride in the back of the car, and it neutralises their sickness. So immersing them in their own little world and also solving a very practical problem for parents, which I'm sure many people in the audience might have experienced. Another project we're very proud of is the one we've done with the National Theatre to provide virtual reality glasses with subtitles for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So now, instead of going to a specific captioned performance where the script runs on a screen in the background because you can't hear what the actors are saying, there are now virtual reality glasses. You can wear them in any performance, and it basically subtitles the performance. So the 11 million people in the UK who are hard of hearing or deaf can now enjoy the same theatre experience as anyone else. And moving very quickly on then to artificial intelligence, and I'm sure that's the one that most people in the room are most familiar with just because it's in the headlines every day. It's either going to solve all our problems, it's going to cause the end of life as we know it, or something in between. But you know, most of our perceptions are driven a little bit by seeing the Terminator and Hollywood movies where the robots are coming. Again, there are some very positive applications of AI happening right now. In healthcare in the US, there's something called the Acute Symphony Network for post-care, where they have analysed the records of 80,000 patients. The AI is an advisor to the doctors. It helps them think about the treatment plans and also when to discharge patients. So it's acting as an advisor, processing more information than the doctor ever possibly could. And in using that, they've actually reduced the readmission rates of patients down to below 19%, just because the doctors can be more sure about the decisions they're making when they send someone home. Another project we're really proud of is one we've worked on with Amazon on their Echo and Alexa technology, a solution to help elderly people live more independently in their own homes. So the elderly care solution allows them to interact with their family and friends. It has reminders on when to take their medication, and it also tracks their daily routine. So any changes in their daily routine can be flagged very quickly because it might indicate that perhaps they are unwell or they need some kind of assistance. So again, using AI there in a very practical way to solve a very acute problem within our country, which is how do we help the growing elderly population to live more independently and happily in their own home. So that was a very, very whistle-stop tour through some practical applications of some of the most emerging technologies that we're kind of looking at the moment. And if you want to see more, I'm sure that the team on the Accenture stand will be able to take you through them in more detail. But I think just to conclude, how we apply these technologies is really going to be critical. And that's what's going to drive how technology transforms the world in the next 5, 10, 20 years. I'm often asked, what do I think is coming next, or what do I think is going to be, the next big thing? What does the future look like? And actually, if you'll just indulge me and let me just go back to television for one moment, I actually think what we're all seeing on our screens at the moment is a really good bellwether, not just for how we perceive technology, but some of the ways in which it might quickly come to impact our own lives. A couple of very quick examples. Game of Thrones, about to reach its climax. Just 8 years ago, we couldn't have even imagined some of the stunning visual effects that have been generated, some of them by a company, Macrovision, that we work with. And when you start to look at that amazing technology, that virtual reality, you can see quickly how having virtual reality headsets for sick kids in the back of cars very quickly will become a reality. Documentaries on nature like Blue Planet, applying technology there is bringing us closer than ever to the natural world and understanding our impact on it, creating a sense of urgency and a real public consciousness about what we need to do around climate change, pollution. And again, technologies like AI and quantum are going to be absolutely central to how we solve those problems. And finally, I don't know if anyone saw it, this week there was the start of a new drama, Years and Years, on BBC, which looks at what will Britain look like in the next 5 years. Technology was central, not just to how they told the story, but to the story itself. And it was full of all sorts of dystopian and quite troubling predictions. I want to change myself into data, was one of the things a character said. But it really, that's playing a really important role in raising some of these things in our consciousness, making us think very carefully about the consequences, the application, and how we truly do use technology to solve problems. And so when I look at the next 5 to 10 years, the technology is going to be central, but actually it's the technology skills will be important. It's those non-technical skills. It's thinking about how we apply the technology in the best possible way for people and the world around us that I think is going to be fundamental. And with that, I will finish. Thank you very much.